Iran's foreign minister says that U.S. President Donald Trump's new nuclear policy reflects greater reliance on nuclear weapons in violation of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Mohammad Javad Zarif says the U.S. nuclear posture review brings humanity closer to annihilation, adding, quote, "No wonder doomsday clock is at its most dangerous since 1953. Top Iranian diplomat says Trump's stubborn insistence on killing the 2015 Iran nuclear deal stems from his dangerous imprudence. Washington's nuclear posture review was released on Friday. The review advocates a complete overhaul of the U.S. nuclear weapons infrastructure and calls for the development of new low-yield nuclear weapons. Earlier, Moscow denounced the policy as bellicose, anti-Russian, and deeply disappointing.
The United States Department of Defense has published a review of the country's nuclear arsenal and the policies governing it. The 74-page document, dubbed Nuclear Posture Review, calls for revamping and diversifying the arsenal. It suggests developing new low-yield atomic bombs mainly to counter Russia.
Expanding flexible U.S. nuclear options now to include low-yield options is important for the reservation of credible deterrence against regional aggression.
However, the proposed smaller nuclear warheads designed for submarine-launched ballistic missiles are still devastating. The low-yield weapons have strength of less than 20 kilotons. That's about the same explosive power as the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima, killing tens of thousands of people in 1945. The Pentagon's policy review has already raised concerns among non-proliferation experts and arms control groups.
This is the most dangerous document the world has. It lowers the threshold. It increases the perception with nuclear commanders that they can get away with starting, fighting, and ending a nuclear war without being hurt themselves.
It's feared that the new policy will make a nuclear war more likely by blurring the distinction between nuclear and non-nuclear military planning.
With this strategy of using nuclear weapons, it's not deterrence anymore, it's a conventionalization. It is to make nuclear weapons operate or seem like nasty conventional weapons. There should be a sharp line between conventional weapons and nuclear weapons.
The Union of Concerned Scientists, the international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons, the Arms Control Association, among other groups, are critical of the new policy. They say NPR shows Washington's greater willingness to use nukes first, warning it could bolster a new kind of arms race. The review seeks to portray a situation wherein the United States, faced with threats from Russia, China, and North Korea, has no option but to move toward an increased number of tactical nukes for deterrence. However, with Donald Trump administration's enthusiasm for nuclear weapons, as revealed in the review, the United States seems to be posing the biggest nuclear threat to the world.
And joining us now out of Missouri for more on the stories, Mr. Dean Henderson, political commentator. Hello, Mr. Henderson. Nice to have you back on the program. Many critics are saying now this is only going to trigger another new nuclear arms race. Your thoughts, please.
Yeah, it's just, honestly, it's pretty much par for the course. Historically, it's always been the United States that's driven the nuclear arms race, even though we like to, tell the people here, the lying mainstream media likes to tell them it's the Russians, that were the aggressor the whole time. It's ridiculous. The United States always drove the nuclear weapons industry. And there was a little break there. I guess, Reagan got the START talks going, and when the Soviet Union came apart, there was some positive things going in the right direction. But now it just seems like, Trump's a cowboy. Imprudence is a great word. It's the best word I've heard about from Zarif on this. And that's what it is. And you imagine a suitcase nuke in the hands of this guy. So, yeah, it's just ridiculous. It's just the peak of the empire and sort of, the beginning of the end to this empire. But it's just gotten so ridiculous over here. And Americans have become so paranoid. I think it's surprising, they like to paint people like me, who write books about conspiracies that actually exist as paranoid. But in fact, the United States population and the mainstream media is so paranoid about Iran, about North Korea, about all these countries that have never intervened in anyone's affairs. And yet it's the United States, the colonial power, at least for the last 100 years, that has just dominated and just built as many nukes as it wanted, tested them as much as it wants, and they're the obvious aggressor. So hopefully Trump's administration lays bare to the rest of the world just what the United States actually has become.
But that's the thing, Dean. You're mentioning all this. Why does the U.S. push this narrative of nuclear disarmament all over the world when it exempts itself and Tel Aviv?
Yeah, it's just newspeak, Daniel. It's just Orwellian, and that's where we're at over here. We keep telling people we want peace, and we're the good guys, and we have the democracy, and then we see Bernie Sanders totally cheated in the election, in the primary, and we see all this voter fraud, and we see that we're not into peace at all, and we see that even in the aid department, where are we in helping the Rohingyas or anybody right now that needs help, now cutting off the Palestinians. So it's basically, like I say, it's this hegemony, it's out in the open now, and maybe at least the Palestinians, other people in the world can see that, okay, this is what the United States really is about. It's kind of a fascist, colonial dictatorship that, lies to us perpetually with their media.
Thank you there, Mr. Dean Henderson, political commentator, joining us out of Missouri.